Good evening. I'm talking with Colleen Dewhurst, who is, I suppose, a classic case of an ability to rise above one's material. Except for Moon for the Misbegotten and a couple of others, she has been in a numbing series of flops over the years. And
numbing is the word.
Well, I suppose that's the word. And I guess your present eminence, or her present eminence, I should say, as if you aren't here for the moment, is a testimony to the fact that it is possible to triumph and be a marvelous actress and a vibrant, buoyant person besides, even though the material was not always under you. There.
Well, here we are.
Here we are. Now that we have that out of the way, I think we should move right on. Colleen Dewhurst, by the way, in case I left out the name. You have done, as I said, a whole lot of plays that just didn't get there. And
yes, but I don't think that I felt that the material always was. I mean, there were.
You didn't lay it to that.
No, I didn't, because I felt that. I mean, a lot of people after Moon, when they would interview me, would talk about the great successes I had had, and I realized that it was just by the fact that I had appeared so often. Yeah. That they were under the impression that I was running in a play when I'd really been opening one act. But I mean, if you think of like Ballad.
That's right. Ballad and Sad Cafe. Actors have a way of abbreviating the title to the point where if you were...
It's an ego. Yeah. They think Ballad. The whole world must know. But Ballad of the Sad Cafe, all over, More Stately Mansions. They were plays that closed quickly, but they were all plays that I felt
respectable.
Oh, yeah. And were exciting women to work on.
That is remarkable, and I look back on it. I can think of years in which Colleen Dewhurst was on Broadway all season, but not in the same play.
No, not in the same play.
It's really good. It's nice to know that they don't hold it against the actors, isn't it, at times like that? What?
Oh, yes, they do. You can get mail that will fascinate you by why have you chosen to do this, and that they feel that it is your responsibility to have chosen a different subject for your public, etc., etc., etc.
Are you talking about mail from fans?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in which you're amazed that they have no idea at all of what the stage is, and that once the season is over, there's no way you're going to work again. If you open and close, that's the end of you for that season.
Well, but earlier we said you have been in more than one thing in a season. I've seen it happen.
Yes, well, if you can manage to close
quickly,
no, or swing from October into February when they begin to cast again, then someone might be standing out there saying, I don't think she'll run in that, and I'll just hand her something else.
Yeah. But people write to you and abuse you for misselection of scripts?
Yes, well, I think when I say abuse, it isn't that many people. It's like the bad review, in contrast to, you can hear actors who cannot quote from 5 good reviews that they've received in a play, but that bad review, they can remember word for word. So therefore, all the mail that you get, the one that will stick in your mind is someone who has written to you to say that they are. You know, there can be 3 letters with that saying, I had a lovely evening and I loved you and it was wonderful.
That's right.
But the one who writes, and especially if they call on you in terms of, because that interests me when you say that about the material chosen, I don't think the actor is in a position to choose. There aren't 5 scripts in front of an actor in July from which they pick one script.
It isn't as if you had a bouquet to choose one flower from.
Right.
Yeah.
You know that someone offers you something and you look at it, and if you like it, you're grateful.
I'm amazed there are any playwrights left in America because of the quick success problem that there is on Broadway and even off Broadway, which has gotten some of the mentality of Broadway. When Bibi Andersson was here, she was saying that in Sweden, there was a whole other idea about a play. A play can actually open that's interesting, and people will say, it's not ready yet, you know, but it'll get better, and the actors will get better. And the play is kept in the repertoire over the season and becomes better, and eventually is a...
Yes, you see, we don't do that here, and because of the critic problem, what we have is that sometimes they are more demanding of the good playwright. They will come and really slash away. I understand why they're doing it, but they must remember that they too have a responsibility to the theater. We're all in the same business. We are on the same side. And as you said, Bibi said, someone must come and say, this is not quite ready, maybe, but this man or woman shows a talent that is fantastic, and 15 minutes of this play is worth 2.5 hours of something you're going to see down the street that is a popular play but does not have, this man must be encouraged.
Oh, if that would only happen.
Yes, this man we must hold close to, you know, the David Mannett's of the world, the David Rabesy, what Edward was when he started. These people must be held by us, and they must be cherished. Otherwise, as you said, I mean, it's very fast on TV. Why should they stay here and spend a year writing a play when they can go out there and make their money and support their children?
Don't you find that the Broadway audiences are really such sheep in some ways that it's irritating? I have seen it happen where I tend to preview of a play that hasn't opened yet, and it's alleged to be a comedy, but nobody's sure whether he or she should laugh or not. And when the reviews come out and make it clear that it is a comedy, the actors in it report that the next night everybody came and laughed in all the right places and so on. And if a review were written that said, this isn't much of a play, but it's worth seeing, and there are 20 minutes in the middle of it in which Mildred Dunnock is worth traveling from Des Moines here by bus to see, would people flock to the theater for that 20 minutes, or do they want to say, we have the playbill for a hit on our coffee table, you know? Look, we saw Annie.
Well, I think, yes, well, I think that what you have to do is that when you write a review, the great critic, like a Harold Clurman, is a man who tells you positively what he has seen and what he had. If the experience was positive, he has a perfect right to say the whole evening was a negative, and he hopes never to see those people or that play again. But if he approaches it from a positive standpoint of saying what he loved and what he didn't, then it's like seeing the caption at the top, in which you know you're looking at a negative caption that has been picked out and thrown up. You're dead. But if you see a positive caption, and then you see, he says, I had reservations. This and this. But then the last paragraph goes back to the positive. Then he gives the public a choice. If I read that and I say, oh, well, I hear he's terrific and she's wonderful, and that there is something here that I should see. I mean, you've gone to plays where they've told you to go, where you really went and said,
yes, I really think the critics' numbers ought to be listed in some cases, so you could call them up and say, thanks a lot. $30 down the tubes.
Well, I think that's it when you say about the sheep thing. You begin to realize that when people tell you that it costs them so much to come into town, so much to park the car, so much to go to dinner, so much for the babysitter, and then they've had a bad evening. Then we've lost them.
Colleen, you've worked with both Woody Allen and John Wayne. Could you compare and contrast them for us?
Well, let's see.
Well, many times I wish I've had your laugh out in the audience.
They're both.
That's really a difficult assignment, isn't it? It's like the thing you get on an exam.
Well, listen, they're both terribly sexy, and obviously the very opposite way. And when I say sexy, I mean in terms of being men who are very, strangely enough, in touch with themselves and in touch with... John Wayne was a shock to me, because when I went out there to do a perfectly god-awful movie called McHugh, I had done the Cowboys with him, but I never saw him because I was never in any of the scenes, and both my boys were just in a snip because I'd gone out to work with John Wayne, and they were so excited, and I never saw him.
That's right. You were one of the whores, weren't you?
I was the
madam, in fact.
The madam, yes.
The madam on wheels.
Taking my girls across the country.
Yeah.
And then when I went out to do McHugh, it's wonderful because you say to yourself, you grew up with the John Wayne image and everything, and you just say, well, listen, I'm not impressed. I mean, it was John Wayne. I mean, we do theater and so on. In the morning, they called me and said if I would now come and meet Mr. Wayne. I walked into that room, and I knew I was looking at a legend. It was just, I never met a more courteous man, bright, very bright, and a man who managed within, I was shaking, within 5 minutes to fluff his lines. He was always perfectly prepared. And once he had fluffed his lines, he gave me the courtesy of making me relax by saying he was terribly sorry, and he apologized. But
he was being gracious.
Yes, I knew he was.
Yeah.
It was just a fluff that he wouldn't make.
I wanted to write an article called John Wayne is a Fraud, because I was standing on the set once of a movie he was making, and I had just met him. And I was standing in the shadows watching him act, and during a break I began to whistle. I can't get it now. The mouth is dry in the studio. But you might had to be there. It was much better there. And he said, he said, wasn't he great? Turning to me, and I said, who? And realized I'd been whistling an old Coward, Someday I'll Find You. And he began to quote dialogue from a Coward play that he liked. And I realized, oh my God, the man is an actor.
Yes.
Of course, he's not a cowboy. He's
yeah, it's very shocking. And
people won't believe that story, or maybe they will, but...
No, but it's true. When you come back and people ask you, what was John Wayne like, and was he big on the set, and does he do... You have a very, very bright man, and a very... really what in the old days was gentleman.
Did you fear, for example, that he might say, I understand you're campaigning against the war in Vietnam, and I don't talk about that kind of thing, and...
Yes, well, I think that you can't help but that be predominant in your mind, and that everybody, as they have waved goodbye to you, has said, whatever you do, Colleen, for God's sake, try not to discuss politics or this or that, and only to get there to find out that the man is not about to have the bad taste to involve in anything, and he knows full well. He has requested you on the movie, so he knows full well everything about you in terms of... That's what I mean about true graciousness.
Have you ever worked with anybody, Colleen, who was just such a pig that you couldn't work with them, really just had to leave the set or get out of the project?
Well, no, not in a movie, because, of course, we know that we could put 10 minutes on the screen of Colleen Dewhurst in the movies, and those would be the highlights. On stage, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you recall the name by any chance? Or,
oh, yes, I recall the name.
Because I asked Betty Davis that once, and she said, yes, Miriam Hopkins. Like that. On television. I think that's certainly refreshing to an interviewer's ear.
You wish I'd be refreshing. No, I'm not going to be refreshing. No, I had an actual physical fight one night with someone in a show. I mean, and they never were conscious of it. That's what I loved the best, was that they had always been so physically, shall I say, bizarre, and it's one of the actors people don't realize. It's people that handle you. I can know something about someone the first time you do an embrace. It's like the man who goes to handle you, and he's like that, right? And you say, oh, I see. Whereas another actor, as soon as he approaches and begins to talk and begins to go into it, he has a knowledge of the body. He has a knowledge of what he's touching. And this man was a man who had no knowledge of anything. I mean, whatever his life is, I don't know. But I mean, to strike you was to knock you to the ground. And one night I came on and I just was so furious, I refused to go down to the ground. And there we were, and he thought the scene had gone marvelously afterwards.
It really was out of touch.
And I was in a rage, oh yes, completely out of touch. That's that kind of self-indulgence of the actor that is, if he is experiencing something, whether it has anything to do with the play or not, doesn't matter about the play, he feels that because he is experiencing something, that's exciting for the audience.
Can you learn from living with a great actor anything about acting? You and George Scott were married, as you probably recall. Can you learn anything from being that close to them that you couldn't learn, say, from acting with them on stage?
No, you learn more acting with someone on stage in a shorter period of time than you could ever learn. It is almost like a form of marriage. You can even live with someone and not know what you're going to know by their choice of what they pick to do on stage. What emotion. I mean, people who whine all during a love scene. People who cry when it calls for laughter. People who laugh when they are in agony. It's most fascinating to watch, and you begin to watch your own traps of the way you react to a situation on stage. Under that kind of pressure, that tremendous pressure that goes up to the opening of a play, you are under more pressure than you probably might be in 10 years of marriage, so that you learn a great deal living out of town and being with each other as to how you react to those pressures. What I learned from George was audience, because George, I was still coming up kind of from the Stanislavski method, just what I'd been discussing, that if you began to cry during a scene, it was so exciting that you were crying, you felt that the world must be fascinated by the fact that you were being, the fact that it had nothing to do with the script, or what the play didn't matter. Whereas George, you could do a play with him, you could get great reviews, and he would you'd get home and you'd get into bed and he'd say, "It's not working." The one scene is I say, "Oh, listen, it's working. It's good, they love it." Then, "No, it may be working for you, and it may be working for me, but they're going to sleep." Next thing I know, we'd both be up and we'd be going through it, trying to figure out. And George is very objective. I was very subjective. He could look at himself and at you and watch what was happening and say, no. And if it doesn't work for the audience, then the play is not working. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn.
That's interesting. When you say he's objective, is that also true in his acting in a sense that you're not saying that when he appears to be feeling sorrow on stage, he isn't feeling anything, are you?
No, no. George is a great natural actor.
Yeah.
I mean, I think George probably is one of the greatest American actors.
I wondered about Moon for Misbegotten because that was such a success, and you had read all the raves, of course, or had them read to you, or whatever. And then you had the chance to do it on television, where you had the opportunity for the first time to see it. Was it painful to finally see it and see?
Well, the first night I didn't watch it. I couldn't watch it. It had become so much a part of my life, and I don't believe in all the talk about, you know, when you come off the stage, are you still involved in the character? Baloney, you know. That's your job. Yes, that's your job. You did it, and it should be, if it goes well, it should be an up afterwards. You know, like drinking a terrific wine or something. It just, you're released. It's like we used to say, which is the real you, you know. The mask supposedly goes on when you come on stage. I begin to think maybe that's when the mask comes off.
When you go on stage, yes.
And then the mask comes back on when you come off, and now you have had that experience and you're able to be charming, and you've able to had the agony, the pain, or whatever it is out there revealed.
Do you find there's a correlation between actors' private lives and pressures building up and getting worse when they're not performing? Because performing is such a release and such a catharsis, and to be able to go on stage for 2 hours and bawl your eyes out or whatever you need to do in that play must be very healthy.
I think it is. I think if the actor is basically healthy, it's healthy. If they don't carry it away from there.
Have you ever worked with anyone who scared you on stage? I've heard of people who worked with Brando early on. I heard that a woman who worked with him in Truckline Cafe had a nervous breakdown because of the sheer fright of being that close to him on stage in that remarkable performance, which I never saw. Does that sound like poppycock to you, or can that sort of thing be true?
I guess it could be true. I mean, I think that I don't think it would, whatever your own craft is, I think at this stage, let's say, no, I wouldn't expect. I know that there would be, I mean, if someone said to me, "Colleen, do you want to go to London and do a TV show with Laurence Olivier or something?" I'm sure that there'd be no doubt in my mind that I'd be like this. But the only saving thing would be to be in the part.
Once you got into it, the fear wouldn't be there.
That's right, then you'd...
Once the mask is off, you're safe.
We're doing this background.
Seems to be a paradox there, some kind.
No, but you're surprised sometimes because we're saying, as people say to you afterwards, "I was so frightened when I went to work with you," you know, and you think, frightened? What is there to be frightened of? But we do it. We build the image, and you realize that on the side, other people are doing it to you.
Sure.
That they're building some image about you, and then they arrive, and you look at them, and you think, they're scared.
Do you ever wish you had less power? Just sitting talking to you, I see the same thing you see on the stage or in the movies. You can go from being the grave, frightening Earth Mother, I know you're sick of that phrase, we all are, to a kind of lightness and hilarity that's way up here. And I wonder if ever it keeps you from playing some things you want to because you're best known as an O'Neill heroine, which seems to imply a sort of heavy, deep, dramatic quality that would keep, for example, Woody Allen from thinking of you in a comic film.
Yes, although it's interesting because I feel that the only reason Woody thought of me, I think Woody came to Moon, I know he came twice, I think he came 3 times, and he would just appear at the door of the dressing room and kind of And one night he said, I said, I know who you are, Mr. Allen. And after he left, Ed Flanders came and he said, wasn't that Woody Allen? I said, yes. He said, what did he say? I said, nothing. Just
That's how you knew it was Woody.
Just go back, just kind of look and go, yes, I don't think it, the only thing I'd like to do is that every time I step on stage, I'd like it to be different than the woman I did before, because that is our cult, is that once they've got you in that role, they want you to play that role forever. So you're not really in an art form.
Well, in the current play you're in, for example, you had said to someone that there are times when you seem to signal them, you have to signal them that it's okay, it's for the scene to be funny.
In the beginning it was, I mean, Zoe was hysterical. She said every time I went to make a serious statement about anything in the play, she said it was like, the audience went, whoops, here it comes. Oh, well, now we're got, this is the heavy part. And it would take us 5 minutes to assure them that, and I learned a great deal because I didn't like that. I didn't because if you're an actress, then comedy is what I started with way back, and that's what I love to do it. I mean, I'm having fun.
I don't see why you couldn't play Juliet, but you say when Joseph Papp cast you that you had to tell him, listen, at 14 I couldn't play Juliet. You must not have ever seen me.
No, well, he hadn't, because Peggy, his then wife, was in the class that I was in with Clermont, and I got this call from this man saying he was going to start a little theater, and that his wife had seen me do Shakespeare in the class, and that he was casting Juliet. And I said, have you ever seen me? And he said, no. I said, no, my dear, never Juliet. Not when I was a baby could I have done Juliet.
I still think you could do it. I think you teach the
But I tell you, though, that the most interesting scene I ever did for Harold, which I love that he made me do the girl in Glass Menagerie, and the scene with the gentleman caller.
The very delicate girl.
And I feel it was some of my best work.
Yeah. You were in a hotel room once watching Moon from the Misbegotten, and the maid didn't know it was you.
Yes, well, when I didn't watch it the first time.
We only have 30 seconds left. Can you jam that in? And the maid looked at the screen and said...
Yes, she looked at the screen and said, she doesn't take anything from anyone, does she? And went out the door. We all kind of stared.
She later found out it was you, though.
Yes, she sent a little note.
Lady standing next to it. Thank you for, if only brightening my day with that wonderful laugh, but all else you've brought to the show. It's been an interesting conversation. Thank you for being here.
You always enjoy, Richard.
Well, I'll be the judge of that. Thank you. Good night. Join us next time.